Hello and welcome to yet another transfer show here on Anfield Index. I'm Trev Downey, still in my field in beautiful rural Ireland, and I am, of course, joined by Mr. Dave Davis. Dave, I've just got one thing to say at the start of this. Before we get into any of the big stories, free Nat Phillips, Dave. Free Nat Phillips. Let's get the campaign going. Let's get this poor kid out of the club. I hate what's happened to him. I mean, I have a fondness for him from that time he had to step in. I thought he did perfectly fine, did well for us in a difficult time. And you just like to see the lad have a career. It's wild, really.
I mean, I can't even remember when we started doing these, but since we started doing these many years ago, we were talking about like Nat Phillips and the opportunities elsewhere and loans and when it will happen. And he's still officially a Liverpool player after all this time. It just seemed absolutely insane. But fingers crossed for him. And again, this is famous last words because we've said this before.
Yeah.
This could be the year the release happens, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel bad for the kid. Right, let's get cracking with the big story that everyone's going to want to hear about right from the start. And that is, of course, the state of play with the Florian Wirtz thing. We are doing this on Wednesday evening, Wednesday, the 11th of June. On Tuesday night, that's last night, the 10th, we all got a little bit giddy because we, despite our best impulses, decided to trust the Here We Go merchant who launched one of his patented tweets. Oh, I don't know when it was, but it was getting on a bit last night. The giddiness was quite palpable. And then we had another of those go-to fellas, Ornstein, who said, whoa, hold your horses. I don't think we're quite there yet. There are, however, interesting reports, one of which has been mentioned in the chat comments already, and I know you want to cite that. But where are we? Because, again, the UK reporters, as you mentioned here in your notes, the UK reporters, when it comes to the German league and stuff like that, they have not been to the fore.
Yeah, it's almost like good scientific bit here, like the Kubler-Ross change curve, wasn't it? Almost that we had that little dopamine hit, didn't we? There you go at 9:38 last night when that tweet goes out saying, and it was a here we go, and everyone was like, brilliant, the celebration, the comps were being launched, and everyone's like, this is it, it's amazing, let's gear up for the excitement. We're not going to be able to sleep tonight. And then a few were rightly saying, like, come on, Ornstein, come on, Joyce, give me my next dopamine hit, give me the confirmation. And nothing was really coming. Then all of a sudden, a bit unusually for that time, David Ornstein was on the reporter show on Sky Sports. Everyone's like, it's a bit unusual. And funnily enough, he's talking about Florian Berts. And funnily enough, David Ornstein, as he phrased it, like fair play to anyone else, but according to the clubs, this is not done. And obviously there it hits last night, 11:22 for those that braved it and stayed up. David Ornstein tweeting, Liverpool by Leverkusen still in talks over Florian Berts at final stages. Clubs in daily contact to reach agreement. The only thing I like about that post or that tweet, Trev, he managed to avoid using the word close. So we've got to give him respect for that because everyone else has used that word 86,000 times. So I'll give him respect for that. But also mention a little bit around Nunez we'll get to. So today it's been, again, a case of like waiting. Is anything going to happen? Like, when's this going to break? And we had Lewis Steele on Media Matters earlier who was clearly saying like full expectation, the full briefing is that they've got another patch journos this week sometime. Like, so we're all kind of waiting with that bated breath still. Now, I'm not going to have a go at pronouncing this. Apologies, but Deutsche Cop out there says, let's call a mess said, are reporting there's a Wirtz medical tomorrow. And as you rightly put, they were the ones who broke the story about Florian Wirtz being in Liverpool, you know, that move. So we'll have to see if that bears out. Well, you know, it's very believable, isn't it? It would be nice if we got something more, but the week is ticking, the clock is ticking. So we are kind of expecting something on this. And maybe someone who knows we're expecting something. I kind of like Frimpong. I like his interview. I like his style. And maybe he's taking a leaf out of Kerkez's book. But just funny this, hasn't it? All of a sudden, young Jeremy tweets that or puts it on his Insta, doesn't he, with the Frimpong and Wirtz. He knows full well what he's doing there. So that's interesting. But we are waiting still, it seems. There is, people say, well, he got the here we go. But then Romano also did a video where he says, final details still to be worked out, which felt like a little bit of a backtrack, doesn't it? But either way, I think Frimpong knows, we all knows. It's still, as all journalists are saying, when, not if. Let's see, and let's expect it, from what they're saying, to be this week.
I'm a tremendous fan of the social media activity of Milos Kerkez and Jeremy Frimpong, and they seem like they're very enthusiastic about joining the club. Both of them doing these overt hints all the time. That from Frimpong's very interesting. You know, he's going to be in close contact with his buddy, and he probably wouldn't chance that otherwise. I think where everyone's a little bit frustrated, Dave, is around the details of it, because it's very hard. You go from place to place, it's very hard to get it. Why, for example, what would have prompted Romano to launch his catchphrase? We have at least one theory there in the chat from James. Was it James? Yeah, James said something about an email. Again, I don't know any of these details. And again, I feel as well as if I'm being... there's a bit of a spoofy thing going on when I'm reading the details. I'm reading about the numbers. And I think if people even had a certain amount of clarity about that, because I swear to God, I'm worried for some of the lads on my timeline. Genuinely worried for them. They are in all sorts of despair and gloom about typical Liverpool. Is, you know, they've gone full FSG out because it hasn't happened now. And do we have any genuine clarification around the numbers, around what it is that might be holding this up? Because I even lodged one little conspiracy theory at you. Is it something to do with, we were apparently reported to be in some sort of negotiations around Quansah? Is that holding things up? What is the story? So where are we in terms of what we know about the outgoings in terms of money, or apparently the personal terms have been agreed long ago?
Yeah, the funny thing is, and even though there's different figures, there's agreement on both sides around this. And what I mean is, if you speak to the German journalist and the patch journos and others, there seems to be almost this weird agreement that the figure reported in Germany will be different to the figure reported in the UK. There's almost agreement that one of us is going to be lying, if you know what I mean. It's a bit weird almost, but it's the way Bayer Leverkusen and their board, the way they're going to put it out. And we know how Liverpool like to put out figures, if we want to phrase it that way, and control that narrative, shall we say. So there's going to be different figures reported. Journalists on both sides adamant about that. The interesting thing we've got today, and again, a little bit, everyone's trying to find out, it still comes down to little small points everyone's saying, like add-ons, are they achievable? But the latest we had today at Anfield Index from a number of sources, we managed to get this stood up, even little bits like, is it going to be paid in euros or pounds? What's going to be like the bank, you know, the banking instrument, the country it's through? It's little weird details that you just never think are going to really come up in a transfer. But that's the info that we're getting. And it was interesting because I almost thought of you and me when we do this, because as we always say, when people were telling me, I replied and went, oh, that's interesting. And actually I was thinking, I don't really give a fuck, to be honest. I just want this done. I don't care if we're playing in like Bahrainian dinar, do you know what I mean? Or whatever it is type of thing. Like, let's just get it done. But the full expectation is still, as everyone's briefing, so you could only go off that it's done this week, and that Wirtz is a Liverpool player by the start of next week.
Yeah, I'm currently flirting with the concept of buying myself a car. I want a truck. I just want a truck. And I've been looking at cars in the north of Ireland. And of course, then the prices are quoted in British pounds as opposed to euro. And it seems like all across Twitter, lads are incapable of making the distinction between it. And they're going off on one. What do you mean 150? And then someone explains they mean euro. And it's just, it feels like fellas want to get wound up about this.
Yeah.
And again, no judgment here. We would all love it to be done, but everything about it seems to be pointing the right way. I will take this little social media thing as a win for today. And if you want to hear about how good Florian Wirtz will be for us, I just listened to young Hendrick's Daily Red, where he was waxing lyrical about him, and I'm genuinely excited to see him play for us, I have to say. And I'm going to make the assumption that he will at this point. Now, we have spoken ourselves privately on the show, in the WhatsApp, before and after the show. I did Daily Red yesterday talking about this topic, Saudi money, and what it might mean for us in terms of the business that we can do. The Darwin Nunez stories seem to be shot down, and once that initial window had come and gone, even more so seems to have gone away. However, not everyone believes that. Not everyone believes that Darwin's definitely not for Saudi. But the more recent reports were the ones, again, that were coming out just a day or two before this initial window closed about Luis Diaz and Al Nassr. And of course, Luis Diaz and Barca is still a thing. Where are we on that story about Diaz? Because the reported amount that we heard yesterday, was it, or the day before, was tremendous, let's be honest.
Yeah, on the Diaz situation, that figure's still doing the rounds, isn't it? And it's important to note the currency, 85 million euros, as keeps getting reported. That's what Al Nassr are prepared to bring to the table on various reports. Now, it's still the same story from our info, and just checking on it today again, that it's Liverpool, Barcelona, or Al Nassr for Luis Diaz. If you stay at Liverpool, you don't get the renewal. Now, Barcelona, I'm almost saying them loosely, because even today, just trying to get a bit on that, there's loads of briefings from the Spanish side that Luis Diaz is wanted. But just to give people an idea of where Barcelona are right now, Barcelona are looking like they're going to do a deal for Ivan Perisic. And this is not Football Manager 2017, by the way. I think he is 36, 37. He's about to be released on a free transfer by PSV, I think it is. I mean, Spurs released him, what was it, a couple of years ago? So the fact they're doing that probably shows you where they are in a financial sense with the other things they're going to do. So I don't see any world, unless something incredible happens, and it's still possible with Barcelona, that they all of a sudden find 85 million euros down the sofa. And Liverpool have put that story out publicly. That's just not going to happen, barring a miracle. Now, people will also be, and I know this will come up in the chat panel, someone's going to say, you can't sell Diaz. Did you see his goal last night for Colombia where he, beats half the Argentine? And I get all that. But there's no change in the info. It's quite clear that he's not going to get a renewal. It does feel like we're boiling down eventually to that. Do you want the Saudi money or not? Because if you don't, you're staying. Well, so we'll have to see what develops around that. Darwin, this was an interesting line, because I've highlighted it there. David Ornstein put it in his article last night about Al Hilal did inquire about Darwin Nunez and said they were made aware of the terms. And it's funny how he kind of ended that there, because you have a feeling it might have been Al Hilal saying, how much is Darwin Nunez? Well, at least 70 million. Hello? And Al Hilal probably hung up the phone type of job in that regard. Now, the people are suggesting that means they may come back, and that is absolutely possible. But I also have the feeling, as we mentioned the other transfer show, Al Hilal were wanting things for the Club World Cup, didn't they? That was a big thing for them, and that deadline has now passed. The other thing to mention, as a few are pointing out, in this article and other reports, that Darwin Nunez, and we said this, didn't we, the last transfer show, has a preference, and Lewis Steele even mentioned it again today on Media Matters, has a preference to stay in Europe, doesn't he? That's the big thing to remember. And Atletico Madrid get mentioned by many as well. That one keeps coming up. Napoli and the Saudis are keen. So it does look like there's still interest in Nunez, but a bit like Luis Diaz, maybe Nunez hasn't got an idea on where he wants to go or where he doesn't want to go. So that's important. And people are mentioning Darwin to Atletico, and that is a team that keeps coming up. And we're trying to manifest this, as you know badly, Trevor. I mean, Simeone's now mentioned him. And if you add Simeone to the president, this is 5 times they've mentioned now Julian Alvarez. For a player that's not for sale, this does just get mentioned time and time and time again. And even a couple of days ago, Diego Simeone going, it's logical. I can't imagine it any other way. Of course, every top club wants him. Barca, PSG, Arsenal, Liverpool, all of them. Again, it's highly unlikely you'd fancy. We can't say this is close. We can't say it's definite. We'd love this to be a swap, wouldn't we? That's what we'd want all summer. And even today, speaking of unlikely transfers, 3 different journalists have reaffirmed, Trev, that Alexander Isak is Liverpool's top target for the striking position. That's the news. But again, please, people, before you jump on this as a chat panel, as I'm saying, a highly unlikely transfer. But we're just telling you what we get, that Isak's being mentioned. Alvarez is being mentioned. It does seem that Darwin Nunez prefers to be in Europe next season. It seems pretty certain that he's not going to be at Liverpool next season as well. But yeah, the whole striker situation it's fascinating to me. It is the next position that's going to be a focus. And it's just important to reiterate something we've talked about for a number of weeks. They are looking at a number of contingencies. And we spoke about it like backup forwards or forwards that could play wide and in the middle. That's got mentioned again today. And even as Lewis Steele said, maybe possibly it's been discussed a stopgap option potential as well, you know, if you can't get who you want this summer. So like we've said for umpteen weeks, long story short, rule nothing out with the forwards.
No, I mean, it's all on the table. The Jota situation is interesting as well. We spoke about Harvey Elliott, one of our attackers anomaly as well, recently on the last show. Can I say something for the record? Because as you were speaking there, I got not 1 but 2 reactions to the show going out live on Twitter from pals of mine on Twitter saying, oh, fair play, I don't know how you managed to do this when, there's literally nothing happening. And some other client in the chat there talking about like how much can you, wring out of mileage can you get out of one story. Here's the thing. We would rather not have any more mileage out of the Wirtz thing. It does not do us any good or edify us in any way, shape, or form to come on here and talk about how the fucking deal is not done. All I want to be telling you about is how Darwin Nunez has gone to Atletico for a ridiculously large amount of money that we never saw coming, or how Florian Wirtz is leaning against somewhere in a Liverpool shirt. But there are a lot of complications in this deal. We didn't even mention one of the theories an awful lot of people have been floating, which is the whole Adidas Nike nonsense that's going on in the background as well. We're just talking about the stories or the lack of stories or the movement or the developments as they progress. And it's vital. This is the most incredibly monumental transfer window that Liverpool have had in ages. We're looking at a team rebuild. We're looking at going into the next season as champions and being confident that we can do it again. I think, we got to talk about every single aspect of every single story as it comes. One of our super chats there, who would you guys prefer in terms of, you reckon strikers?
I think because it was about that time that we were talking, I think it's, if I'm right, there you go. Why do we exclude Isak or Alvarez? It's easy for me. It's Alvarez. The main reason being, you look at Isak's injury record is the big thing for me, and you could be paying top dollar for someone whose injury record isn't that different to Diogo Jota, in all honesty. Plus, I think that in terms of link, they are slightly different. Isak is just a pure out-and-out number 9, isn't he? Plays on the edge. That's his job. Alvarez can do that, but also, as we profiled him on various shows, can drop deep, can play a few positions and link better. And I'm not being funny. I've said it on a few pods. my absolute dream front line of Salah, Wirtz, and Alvarez. That's the Premier League done for next season.
Yeah, just pack it up, lads. We'll finish up early. I'd be of the same opinion around Alvarez. It was that word that was used before by Arne in terms of facilitator, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's got to be something that we're thinking about, although certainly Wirtz would tick that box too. Our next area of intrigue is that apparently Nottingham Forest are interested in not one, not two, but three of our players. Where is this coming from? This completely got past me. I didn't see it at all. And now I'm starting to think, oh, who could be coming the other way that we could possibly make part of the deal? So what's this Forest angle?
Yeah, this is one that, when it comes to you at first and you're thinking it'll be nonsense, but you try and get it stood up, you look and actually someone says, yeah, that bit. And you're like, Christ, is there something in this? Doesn't mean it's any done deals or anything imminent at all. But yeah, three players Nottingham Forest have made an inquiry over. One's on the screen, Jarell Quansah, Harvey Elliott, and Diogo Jota. Those are the three players we've got that Nottingham Forest have made an inquiry for. And I'll be honest, when we got this, there was a little bit of me thinking, well, hold on. Forest have got wingers. There's Morgan Gibbs-White there as well. So where would Harvey fit in? And also, you think about Forest for Quansah in terms of, well, they've got Murillo as the left-footed centre-back, and I can't remember. I think it's Milinkovic, if I'm right, is the name for the other centre-back. But, yeah, there you go. And, I mean, I kind of want to treat these players a little bit separate because Harvey, who we know has done that interview and clearly is looking at options, has inquiries galore, is the info we've got. Wolves have been in for him. Newcastle have asked about him, although it's important to say the info we've got. Newcastle, that was Paul Mitchell before he got ousted by Eddie Howe. And if you look at Newcastle, they've moved on to, it looks like Elanga. So I suspect that one's ruled out, but Brighton in the mix as well. So Harvey's got plenty of offers and he's done that interview, hasn't he, about, I have to look at my options, I can't waste my career. I think we all know what's going to happen there. The important part to say with Harvey, though, is a bit like Quansah, he's at the Euro under 21 till the end of June, isn't it? So it feels like it'll all be building till then. Quansah, though, is fascinating, and it's fascinating how stuff's come out today, literally in the last few hours, hasn't it, about Quansah. Quite a few reports on the German side saying, separate from Wirtz, but Bayer Leverkusen are properly looking at him as an option with Jonathan Tah departing. Now, doing a bit of digging on this, you've got people will group them together, Trev, but it's important to separate Quansah and Elliott in terms of the way they are. Elliott is a massive Liverpool fan, is he? You can tell in his interviews he's desperate to stay. He wants it to work. He's just almost... It's like he's accepted finally, isn't it? It's not going to happen basically at Anfield. It's just the way it is. Quansah, for all info, wants to play football. Isn't a die-hard Liverpool fan, wants to play football. And the big thing about Quansah as well that we got as well over the last sort of 24 hours, sees himself as having a real shot at Thomas Tuchel's World Cup squad, for not this summer, but the next summer. And knows full well, if the situation stays as it is right now, not a chance in hell. Jarell Quansah knows he needs to play football. And essentially, barring a miracle, and you never know what can happen in football, but it's nearly impossible to see him getting those minutes at Liverpool, isn't it? And working his way into that World Cup squad. So that is the big driver for Jarell Quansah. It's just funny, isn't it, tonight that Romano, Plettenberg, and a few others are just starting to report that he is on Leverkusen's shortlist. And it was funny how back at the time it was mentioned there was a few options, weren't there, linked in part exchange, and this seems to be coming back round again. But yeah, that was the big update that we got for today. And right now, I would not put a single penny on Harvey Elliott or Jarell Quansah being at Anfield next season.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting call for Jarell if the Bayer Leverkusen interest is real, because obviously that's a good high-profile club in a solid league for him to go to. and he would be optimistic he would play, I assume, if they're going to sign him for biggish money. But I don't know if it's quite the same as it used to be, but there used to be that fear that if you were kind of out of sight and out of mind, if that England thing was really a driver for him. Why anyone wants to spend time in close approximation with Thomas Tuchel, I do not know, but fair play if that's your goal. It's going to be very interesting to watch, and I think Harvey's obviously on his way out the door. Can we just actually pause it there one sec? Because did you see, again, it was one of those things where I think somebody said it and everybody ran with it. Did you see this? Well, it wouldn't be that bad if we hung on to Darwin now that we've got Florian Wirtz stuff coming up. I mean, I'm sorry, but that is actually mental. We have loved the kid as much as anybody, probably more. A lot of us here at this particular channel, and wanted and willed it and sort of said, make him be good now, and it just hasn't happened. We have to admit that has been just a misadventure for all concerned. And the kid himself will be thinking, hang on, I was on track to be one of the top European talents. I need to get back to that.
Yeah.
So I don't see any way in which he is not an absolute certainty to move, but I just wanted to get your take on that.
I absolutely think it's bobbins anyone who thinks that, just in terms of, and I know we could all have our blind spots or players that we love and personalities. I get all that. But you've got 3 solid years of evidence that Darwin Nunez isn't good enough. You've had 2 elite coaches have a go with him and basically give up a little bit on him. I think that's quite clear now as well, looking to move him on. And add that with, we know what they were trying to do in January before, obviously, other moves didn't work out. And I saw that as well, like you said. And my honest thought of it is this in simple numbers. Okay, let's bring Florian Wirtz in and keep Darwin Nunez. Now, instead of missing 40 chances a season, Darwin can miss 60 chances a season. Let's watch that fold out, shall we, and see if we're all happy at the end of it.
That's pretty much where my mind went as well. The big disappointment, I think, of yesterday evening was that we didn't get the Kerkez announcement. I think everyone would have been quietly delighted with Frimpong and Kerkez with Wirtz in the situation it appears to be in. Everyone would have been quite giddy with that, actually, and it would have made the whole Wirtz thing seem even more inevitable because look what we've done. But the fact we're still waiting on the Kerkez news is frustrating for people. We had the knowledge that there was a complication because Bournemouth wanted to get their replacement in situ. Apparently, all the things were in place, I's dotted and T's crossed, in time for the deadline last night. At least that's what I was led to believe. And yet no announcement came. Do we know why that was?
Yeah, so I suppose it comes back a little bit to what you want to believe. I mean, Sky had out yesterday afternoon, like, Liverpool have finally made contact with Bournemouth. Like, come on, guys, where have you been? Do you know, like, what are you trying to sell here type of thing? But, I mean, the simple fact is he didn't play a single minute of the internationals. He's released from the camp for, what was it, quote unquote, private reasons. You know, we know what's happened. And if there's nothing in it, why do we also get the reports? And I'm probably butchering his name here, but Bournemouth have agreed a deal for Rennes left back, Trufferet, I think it's pronounced. So why would they be signing a left back when they've already got 2? If this is, you know, we all know what's going on realistically. It just feels like almost Berts will be the cake and Kerkez will be the frosting a little bit more than anything. They're just waiting. But everyone that we speak to still says, like, yeah, absolutely, it's done. And funnily enough, Bournemouth players are saying the same now as well, because Justin Kluivert in the Dutch camp, when he's interviewed by Dutch TV, as he's on the screen there, said, yeah, he'll probably go there, as into Liverpool. I hope so for him. He hasn't really said goodbye yet, but I hope he'll make it happen there. I mean, for God's sake, players in his current team are talking. We all know, again, what's happening. It's just the old when, not if.
Yeah, and look, I do get that nobody wants to count their chickens, and I kind of spent an awful lot of my life not wanting to be optimistic, because pessimism is a lovely little blanket you can wrap around you, and you tell yourself you can never be disappointed. But you get a bit older and you realize, well, you might as well have the crack when you can and be hopeful when you can, because if you get a kick in the balls, it's the same kick in the balls, right? So that's where I am with this. And I'm finding myself, even just after talking about these stories, very, very giddy about the potential for next season, what this team looks like. I mean, it could be a little bit of a train wreck as they get to know each other, but my God, the excitement levels will be through the roof. And just to finish with Liverpool then, a little bit of bad news, and we touched on it the last day. Oh, sorry, we didn't. I touched on it on Daily Red yesterday, was the news about the Stefan Besic injury. And, you know, this... I don't know how to say this without sounding like, you know, you're talking about players as commodities, but it will be a complication because of the fact that Besic might well have been one of those that might have been moved along. We're not sure what his status is within the club and within the opinions of the people who matter there.
Yeah, it's a tough one, because people will say definitely this, definitely that. In simple terms, we'll never fully know, because he was going to come back for pre-season. He was going to be assessed. A lot of suggestion was that there wasn't much hope for him realistically, as in he needed to play football. So if it wasn't a move, a permanent one, it was going to be a loan. And I think people kind of just almost said it a little bit like, no, he'll be the Endo replacement. On what basis? It was just a feeling and a vibe, wasn't it? I think people were working on. But doing a bit of digging on this, that there wasn't sort of much expectation that he was going to trouble the starters. And if you think, this is also important to remember, Liverpool are briefing all the patch journos, as we've said, across the board, that Wirtz is going to come in as a 10, which means that Wirtz is going to be the starting 10. We know about Szoboszlai probably reverting to the 8. So the midfield options get more and more congested there, don't they? Where's Bajcetic going to fit in that? And now, unfortunately, even if you are a big Badge fan and you believe that, this one, I mean, hamstring surgery, because a complication that came up at Las Palmas, didn't he? And you feel for the kid. Again, something that doesn't help him, Trev. A lot of injuries in a short career, hasn't he? He spent more time out injured than on the pitch, unfortunately. The kid just needs to play football. And now he's had hamstring surgery. Sounds horrible, but as people are suggesting, he's going to struggle to be back for pre-season. I just don't know where Badge goes at Liverpool from here.
Yeah, I think he goes on loan yet again. I think that's the obvious sort of thing for the lad whenever he recovers. That's pretty much that, I think, in terms of Liverpool. Is there anything else at all that's hanging around you want to throw in right at the end, or are we pretty much good to go into the Premier League?
No, I think it is important to reiterate what you said, because there is a mix. And you're right, you talk about mates. I have a guy that I say speak to or message me regularly on Twitter, and I saw his account today. And at one point last night, it was like, this is brilliant. We're going to conquer all of Europe with Wirtz and all this. And then he kind of fell through. And I even saw it this morning. He was like, we've been hoodwinked by FSG. It's another... Honestly, I think he was one step away from tweeting like, where's the Caicedo money, John? Type of thing. And just like, it really does seem to be a flicker from end to end. Like you, we can only base off what we're hearing. When, not if. But in the near future, before that 1st of July, before everyone's back, if Liverpool have got Kerkez, Frimpong, Wirtz, are we not buzzing people? Is that not like big signings, things that move the needle as we talk about specifically? Is that not quote unquote big club behaviour? And I know someone will jump on this and say, oh, they're not leaning yet, it's not done. But we're on the 11th of June right now. I'm excited for it. People can pick what they want to be.
Yeah, those three plus some sort of reliable goal scorer, even just that much, it's paradigm shifting for the team, because it means more goals from the center of attack. more creativity via Wirtz, more creativity via the fullbacks. Yes, we lose Trent, but Robbo taking a step back. So it's going to be incredibly, incredibly exciting if and when these things happen. Let's have a look then around the rest of the Premier League. And we should start with City because they did quite a bit of business in that short window, Dave.
Yeah, it was such a contrast between them and the other Club World Cup team, Chelsea, that City got their business done, didn't they, practically, for everyone they were trying to get in time. That Reinders was signed from AC Milan. We know, as we said in the last show, Aïnouri got confirmed from Wolves. Cherki got in before the deadline from Lyon. And they even pinched a keeper from Chelsea, didn't they? Marco Bettinelli, I think it's pronounced, because Scott Carson departed. They got that homegrown spot filled, didn't they, as they wanted to. So I think whatever anyone says, and they'll try and massage it, that they didn't want Kerkez and Wirtz, we know the truth. City showed a ruthlessness and efficiency to get that business done, it's fair to say, in time. And interestingly as well, that, as it says there, Jack Grealish, as we mentioned, we said he was going to be left out the Club World Cup squad. He's now looking at options like Everton, Villa. So we'll see what's next for him. But City, in terms of that, they got their business done before they head out.
Now, by contrast, Chelsea, also in that competition, have had a bit of a mare.
Just a complete mare in terms of everyone they tried for before, as in Ekitike, couldn't get it done. Seems like, actually, from reports, that he might not even be that keen. He may be looking at us. We'll have to see how that unfolds. Bino Gittins, do you remember the lad at Dortmund? They were haggling right up and they left it too late. They couldn't do that deal for him. There is the AC Milan keeper as well. Magnan, wasn't it? Mike Magnan, the French international. They were back and forth, but they pulled away from it because they didn't want to sign a 27th goalkeeper or whatever it was as well. So absolutely everything fell through for Chelsea they were trying to do. And it's quite interesting as it's there on the screen. They have made a decision in terms of anyone that wasn't part of the squad who was on loan was not going to the Club World Cup. So Felix, Petrovic, Sterling, even Axel Disasi, because people thought they'd take him back when that Villa loan finished. They were like, nope, you're staying, you're not part of the squad. We'll sort other moves. And everything else for Chelsea, I mean, it's just funny that they report this as here we goes or breaking news when players move between Strasbourg and Chelsea. It's just kind of funny, isn't it, really, that they report even as anything like, oh, negotiations between Chelsea and Strasbourg. I mean, come on. We all know exactly who owns both of them. So Kennedy Paez, the young South American starlet, he's going to be there on loan at Strasbourg next season. And Sarr has come across, along with Andre Santos, to move into the Chelsea squad. But yeah, an interesting comparison, considering this whole deadline was about the Club World Cup teams. City landed everyone. Chelsea, nada.
Yeah, which is, quite a shocker for that lot. But never fear. They will get their act together in the next one. You can be sure of that. Now, Leeds are on their way up, and they are... Do you remember when Forest came up and there was the crazy amount of signings in? Did it end up being like 30 players or something wild over a couple of windows? Leeds are obviously going to have to, the promoted clubs don't have the greatest of records in the Premier League of late. They're going to have to try to do something, make some sort of a splash. Who have they got their eye on? Have we heard anyone? Is there anyone fall into that category, like maybe like Grealish, who, had this high profile but is unsettled at their club? Is there anyone that they're aiming their noses at?
I like this, by the way, because I am sick of when clubs come up. Like Norwich, who always come up and spend like 4 million quid, and then everyone wonders why they go down, and they're just there to collect those parachute payments and that type of thing. That annoys me. So I like when Forest did that madness the other season, or clubs have a real go at it. I've always got time for that. And the reason it's important to call that out with Leeds, that they're interested still in quite a few players. And I won't pretend I know it inside out, but the info that we got is Leeds ownership group is serious, isn't it? It's linked to the San Francisco 49ers. There's the Red Bull investment. They want to have a real go at this and know it's going to take serious cash to bridge that gap. And as the Athletic said, they're trying to sort of deal for a centre-half, Biol at Udinese, somewhere around 15 million. They had a bid turned down for Habib Diarra at Strasbourg, so Sweeney Todd didn't do him a favour there at 22 million. Sean Longstaff, who's released on a free, they're having talks with him at the moment. They're trying to get that over the line. And someone did mention it. They had made an inquiry for Kostas Tsimikas as well, but inquiry was all I have. I didn't have anything more as like a bid or anything like that. But just from asking around about it, there's quite a few journalists who were saying, like, just keep an eye on Leeds. It might be tough for them to convince those targets, to come and a newly promoted team and how it works out. And it's probably, as a few said rightly, it's not helped by the fact the promoted teams are usually the relegated teams at the moment, aren't they? That plays into the mix. But I like this. Leeds look like they're going to have a proper go at it.
Two people I know quite well will be very excited about all of this. Big Leeds fans. Some other bits then around about the league. We've got some Arsenal news. Zubamendi is close. We have some Mark Guay news, a little bit about Newcastle. Is the Thomas Frank thing completely finalised? I see several different things, threads here for you to tie together for us.
Yeah, there's quite a lot just going on around the Premier League. Nothing's really, despite we want to call it window one, nothing is ramping down. It's quite the opposite. Everyone's still in full-blown get-it mode. And Zubamendi's an interesting one because it's come out. Arsenal are going to win that race, and they're going to win it by paying even more than the release clause. They're going to pay above that so they can do it in instalments, and talk around it'll be the 70 million euros, which works out around 61 million quid. So that bit extra to break it up in installments. Mark Guay, a player that just seems to keep going a bit quiet now and again, but suggestions that Arsenal are in the mix for him. So that's one to mention. This one, Newcastle are a fascinating team because of all the things they need. And Bruno Guimaraes, their captain, spoke this week about we need to strengthen a number of areas. And he mentioned, like, we probably need another attacker. And he was on international duty. We probably need to look at the midfield as well. But the big one they're moving for is James Trafford, the Burnley goalkeeper, 30 million quid. That seems to be the one. And it's interesting as they say it, competing with Nick Pope for the number one position. I mean, Eddie Howe's in charge and he's making the shots, but it's an odd one. It doesn't seem like it's the priority call, but hey, who are we to tell Eddie Howe and Mad Dog Tyndall what's the best thing for Newcastle that way? You also mentioned Thomas Frank. I mean, all the suggestions are we're waiting for that compensation deal to be done, around 10 million quid, isn't it, with Brentford, so he becomes a new Tottenham manager. And Brentford, I thought you were a good run club, but the fact that the exclusive from various ones tonight seemed to be Scott Parker on your shortlist. I mean, if ever there was a drop-off, I would honestly say, maybe this is one of those crazy early calls, but if you look at Brentford, if they do lose Frank and Buemo and Visser, for instance, and they allow Scott Parker to come in, I'd just keep an eye on Brentford at the wrong end next season would be my suggestion. Like, he's absolute spoofer is Scott Parker. So there you go on that one. And then the other one, Bournemouth. Yeah, everyone's expecting them to be raided. We know about Zabiani. Semenyo is a possible departure. And a name that Liverpool fans will remember, Johan Bakayoko. Do you remember the Belgian, the PSV, right-footed left winger? He's got a year left to go on his deal as well. So Bournemouth are having a look at that as well, on maybe a cut price move. So yeah, there's just a few teams beginning with B who's a lot to keep an eye on for.
Scotty Two Coats, I am taken aback, and I'll tell you what, I might just make a sort of cheeky little trip down. I'm not familiar with the old betting, but I might make it little trip down to my bookie and say I'd like to put money on Queevy and Kelleher facing the most shots in the Premier League. I think he's going to be a busy boy, and he'll be very much required. Hopefully he'll have a great season for himself. Right, what else have we got then? Let's move to Europe. And we'll finish with the Saudi stuff in terms of the raids they were trying to do. We'll start off with this keeper story. The Barcelona situation is interesting there. And we have the European champions keeping a hold of their goalkeeper too.
I know you love some obscure stories as I do. So there's a few coming up for you, which I think you're going to love in this section. Barcelona have got Ter Stegen, who many will think, well, German number one, top-class international. They've just won the league. Why possibly would they be looking for another goalkeeper? But they are set to buy Juan Garcia from, city rivals, Espanyol, for around, say, 30 million quid, which, again, people, it's just important to reiterate, Perisic and Garcia, Barcelona are already spending the money they don't have. So just think about that when we speak about Luis Diaz at the same time. But this keeper, apparently, and speaking to a Barcelona journalist on this keeper is like, a young Barcelona fan, grew up at the club, went through the youth academy, then went to Espanyol. So they see him almost as like the keeping version of, do you remember Gerard Piqué, where he went away to United, but then came back a hero? The fans are all for this and are really excited and wanted this. And part of the things the Barcelona fans also, I never really clocked this apparently, they despise Ter Stegen. And actually, this is a weird little story that you'll like. An article or a poll, if you want to call that, was run online in one of the local various, Barca Catalonian outlets about what should happen with Ter Stegen. And the top answer, which got over 40% in one paper online and combined, was executed, Trev. So there's always a little story there as well. I'd have maybe just gone with sold, but yeah, that's maybe gives you an idea of the breadth of feeling that I didn't realise, but it does seem that Ter Stegen is absolutely not popular with Barca fans at all. And
wasn't there something, Dave, about when they were celebrating the league win? There was something where the Hansi Flick and what's the dude that's been there as the Joan, the main man, Laporta, were having some sort of heated words. Apparently, it was about a footballer. Was that Ter Stegen? I believe it was. What was the reason for that?
Just like that, there was talk about because Szczesny's their backup keeper, or he's been in, and he's about 600 years old now, isn't he? And he'd been in, then he'd been dropped, and there was a lot of talk that Laporta wanted Szczesny back in. Now, for everyone who remembers Szczesny, he left Arsenal, I'm probably wrong on this, but it feels like 6-7 years ago now as well. So for some to be even thinking he could be in above Ter Stegen probably says a lot in that regard. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And then the other goalkeeping one, Donnarumma, fresh from winning the European Cup, had been a lot of links with other clubs, hadn't he? Saying, he was set to move, but came out in the last few days and said, no, want to stay at PSG, happy here, so we can delete him, unless he's lying, from any moves.
Right. Now, I know you've got some news about Jadon Sancho, whose career is very strange. You've also got some Milan and Napoli news for us as well, and maybe then one or two other bits. I know there's at least one Galatasaray story that we're going to get to before the end of this particular section, and then we'll finish with the Saudi stuff. So Euro roundup before we go to the last little bit there.
Good shout. Yeah, we'll save Galatasaray and Saudi for the last two. But in terms of, I suppose you'd call them other movements, I mean, Jadon Sancho, multiple reports that Borussia Dortmund are back in for him on the third time, Trev, and will absolutely be looking to have Manchester United's pants down on that, because he doesn't want to stay at United. United don't want to keep him. I mean, for God's sake, Chelsea paid $5 million to not keep him, basically. I know they couldn't do the deal, but again, I think the big thing that's happened here is ultimately when you give a player a ridiculous contract over 300 grand a week, he is not going to give it up easily, isn't he? And it seems that Sancho wants to play football, but doesn't want to give up any of the wages. So he's happy to go, I'll play for Dortmund again, but I need my wages subsidised. So that's between you guys to work out. So we'll see what develops on that. As is on the screen, AC Milan are having a real reshuffle, if you want to call it that. Yunus Musa, the American international, Napoli are in for him, trying to buy him. And they also, and I'm probably pronouncing the name wrong, they had Benacer, I think it's pronounced, on loan at Marseille. So maybe there's talks of whether they can do that as a permanent deal or a loan for another year. So that's one to watch at. Other Euro moves, Paredes, a player he's been around every European club, hasn't he? France, Italy, but now looking at going back home. So Boca are set to do a deal for that as well. Kevin De Bruyne, Trev, finally, after about 8 million years, there's a here we go coming. Well, we said that as well. It's done, but it's obviously finally expected to happen. But aside from the two we're going to get to, the third biggest story in Europe today is a man you've asked me about a lot. Victor Gyökeres. And Victor Gyökeres and his agent and the sporting president are now at war because the agent and the player are adamant that, there's this gentleman's agreement where we can leave for a certain amount, a really good price, which makes us attractive at 27 years old and might get us that final big payday in an elite league. But then the sporting director is on the screen, comes out there and says, well, people should know that, and he doesn't, these is the way it's translated from various outlets. People should know that threats, blackmail, and insults will not work with me. I can guarantee that Gyökeres won't leave here for 60 million plus 10 million in add-ons, and that's in euros as it appears. As of now, we haven't had one offer for him. And he goes on to talk about it that, something like 80, 90 would be more realistic, which I'm not being funny, Trev. This is probably a real death knell a little bit, I think, for Gyökeres, because I just can't see at 27 and the concerns that we've talked about, anyone ponying up the type of money that Sporting are asking for. And also the fact now that, it's outright war, isn't it, between the player, the agent and the president? Like, this is just what looked like almost a certainty a couple of months ago. Now maybe explains, as we've talked about, why Arsenal appeared to have disappeared off the radar, why others don't seem to be in the mix. Price and a president at war might just be the answer.
Yeah, you've failed completely to factor in Manchester United.
Yeah, true.
who could quite possibly do that. We will start wrapping it up then, because we want to get to what did and didn't happen in terms of final day madness that we were kind of had half an eye on. Apparently, there was a fresh inquiry for a Liverpool player. There was some Fabian Ruiz interest and several other high-profile players. And when you get through that list of people who had their, what was that phrase, resolve tested, we might get to, I think, the most interesting story of the day, which is Bayern Munich and Galatasaray related. So let's get through the Saudi stuff first. Who were the players who were approached, or at least the agents who were approached at the last minute?
Yeah, it's interesting to point out with this that when we did a bit of digging, and we've kind of used this before, and I'm not sure people have always got what we're meaning. The Saudis work different to all of Europe. And what we've said by that, or what we mean by that, is the Saudis don't work on European time because they've got all the money. So they don't really care too much. They don't work with the same urgency that other European clubs do in the market. So as a few journalists have been saying, they left it so late to do things, not thinking it would be that difficult, shall we say, and then like, no, it's too late, or we're not going to make the move there. So as a few reports came out, Sesko, they made an inquiry for, that was battered away by his team, no interest. We talked about Darwin, as you mentioned. We know the result of that one. Fabian Ruiz was inquired for, that got battered away. And it actually got that desperate, shall we say, for what the Saudis were trying to do. They actually started, Trev, trying to buy players between themselves. You know, all the PIF-owned teams just move players around that way. And as the Ornstein Bombers came out, Al Hilal were in talks to sign Kante. Remember N'Golo Kante from Etihad, 34 years. You'd almost forgotten he played for them, didn't he? And genuinely, sort of chasing this up today, it didn't even look like they got that done in time. You know, like unless somebody's going to come out later, like a loan between them. So Saudi almost, and part of the other thing that journalists said, which is borne out and true, they spent so long putting 5 different offers to Victor Osimhen because that was who they wanted to be the figurehead, you know, and lead it all. And that just fell flat. It all just went to pot a little bit from what the Saudis wanted to happen. So as it stands here, and obviously unless something comes out around Kante, disaster really in that regard for how it worked with them. So that's probably the second most interesting. And like you, for me, I think this is a fascinating story. And I've got a little twist on this for you as well. You'll like it. Leroy Sane, we've talked about, and Bayern, and obviously everything like that. And Galatasaray came in. And as Ornstein had it about 10 a.m. this morning, they're agreeing to sign him. They're trying to get it tied up. And he was going to the Club World Cup, wasn't he, with Bayern, and all that was done. This is practically done. Leroy Sane is not going to the Club World Cup with Bayern Munich at all. He is heading for the massive riches of Galatasaray. And when I say that, Galatasaray have blown all their budgets on this. And that's the starting context. And if we have got any Turkish fans, I'm going to apologise for my pronunciation because I did a bit of digging on this and we don't really get Turkish info very often, but it's our first time, so we're going to run with it. Give me a bit of rope on the pronunciation. The key term is, Trev, Başkan, which is the Turkish, apparently, if I'm pronouncing it right, for president. And a lot of the Turkish clubs will have president of their clubs, and a president like Spain has to be elected and gone in. Galatasaray, apparently all the Başkan candidates, if you want to call it that, they've all banded in together almost for the good of the club and have put mega money in front of Leroy Sane. And people will say, yes, they won the league. Yeah, absolutely. But just to be clear, paying Leroy Sane 15 million euros a year is destroying their budget. It smashed through their wage ceiling beyond belief. Not only that, Trev, the Başkans, if we're going to call them that, are bandied together and they're going all in for Victor Osimhen as well. They want Osimhen and Sane to be their sort of the lead in the face of Galatasaray, absolutely destroying their wage budget. And if anyone doesn't believe that, remember until a while ago, and this isn't being derogatory about the player, Wilfried Zaha was rumoured to be their highest earner, you know, the freebie from Palace and all that. I mean, so that's not being disrespectful, but there's levels in European football, isn't it? So, yeah, a club that no one had down may well have Galatasaray, Leroy Sane and Victor Osimhen leading their attack, who, if you're honest, Trev, there's a lot of Premier League clubs would do that right now, wouldn't they?
Yeah, most, if not all, would be interested in having those two guys in their rotation for sure. Very much including us, I would imagine. It's a strange story for so many reasons, because it seemed, didn't it, Dave, for a long time that Sane was absolutely going to be staying around. In fact, there was a lot of talk about money being pushed around to ensure that he could stay there, that his wages would be taken care of. So it is a weird one. You did have a Kim Min-jae story as well, just before we finish.
Yeah, the other one that Bayern are well looking at is they are touting round the Korean centre-half, the boy that they bought from Napoli, who, when they got him, it was a real coup, wasn't it? There's a lot of clubs wanted it. He'd just been the centre-half superstar in Napoli's title-winning team, along with Kavicha, Osimhen, who we've just mentioned. But it's through injuries and different things, it's really not worked out. I mean, Liverpool have been linked with him. I've not got anything on that to say, and other teams, but 28 years old. But the big thing that they're also looking to do for Bayern is his wages are apparently massive, and they've got a lot of high earners at Bayern, as we know. So part of it is they don't want to be paying that sort of money for their third, fourth choice centre-half, quite understandably. So we'll see if they can shift him. We'll see what offers might come up for that centre-half.
Dave, we've done it again. Got through another one, hitting the hour mark as I speak. Thanks to the thousands of you watching. I didn't think we'd have as many tonight because of the sort of after the Lord Mayor's show, part of it being just the day after and nothing having happened. But nothing has changed, and these player pursuits will be ongoing. I've one question for you before I let you go. Do you consider the Saudi influence and that money and that big purse that they have will continue to be a disruptive influence into this second part of the window with the Club World Cup over?
Do you know what? And I know I'm going to sound like a politician about this at the same time. I'm not convinced. I wouldn't 100% bet against it. But if you think of what everything had led towards and everything had been rumoured, and I get people saying that, well, there's only Al Hilal at the Club World Cup, so I get that. And I get people saying as well about Al Nassr linked with, Luis Diaz and others, and there's other clubs in the mix as well, Al Ittihad. So it's very possible, but I do feel the time for the big ones to happen has passed, isn't it? It just didn't work out with Al Hilal, and they went all eggs in the basket on Victor Osimhen, and it didn't work out. And then they started trying late inquiries, which just didn't work out as well. So it is possible. The money's there. There's others, but I just think the paradigm shifting element might not be what we think it'll be now.
Yeah, well, we'll just rely on the paradigm shift of Liverpool's recruits and what that'll do to our team. And again, loads of news around that. Even if it's not the exact news that you want, we'll get there. Thanks to Dave, as ever, for scrounging up all this information. It's always a joy to go through it with you. Thanks for you guys in the chat. Thanks to all the live viewers and the listeners later on. And we'll be back with you. We might give you a few days off. We'll be back with you soon.